It being 6 o'clock, I call the October 2024 Town of Clayton Planning Board meeting to order. Good evening. I'm James Moore, the chair of the Town Planning Board. This planning board is comprised of volunteer members of the public appointed by the Clayton Town Council and is responsible for providing recommendations on key amendments to the zoning and the code of ordinances, including text amendments, rezonings, and conditional zoning districts. Any decision made here tonight is a recommendation for the town council and will ultimately be decided by that body. While we welcome public involvement and discourse, please wait until invited to speak by the chair. Prior to addressing the board, speakers are asked to provide their full name and address. Speakers will be allowed a maximum time of 3 minutes and may be asked to stop if they go over. May we now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Next item on the agenda is a roll call.
Good evening, Chair Moore. I'd like to do the roll call. Before I do so, I want to do a quick introduction. I appreciate the planning board coming in a little earlier today just to enjoy some snacks and to meet our staff. But just in case you haven't had a chance to meet them this evening, we have our new deputy town manager, Ms. Courtney Tanner.
Good evening.
We have, you've seen her before, Ms. Audrey Deschen, our senior planner.
Everyone.
We have Whitney Murphy. She is our planner 1. And Ms. Susan Long, our planning technician. So these are some of the new faces that you'll see making presentations to the board. We are currently hiring for a planner 2 in case anyone in the audience is interested as well. But we're looking to have a full team here, hopefully, if not by the end of the year, starting early next year. With that, I'll go ahead and proceed with the roll call. Chair Moore, Vice Chair Dupree,
Present.
Board Member Williams,
Present.
Board Member Lee is absent. Board Member Applewhite. Board Member Lipscomb. Board Member Saraski. And Board Member Gleason.
Here.
And Board Member Bland.
Present.
Sir, we do have a quorum. Thank you.
We also have Board Member Spence.
I'm sorry?
Did you call Board Member Spence?
Oh, I'm sorry, Jed. Board Member Spence is an alternate and he is present. We can say that he can sit for Mr. Lee.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Spence.
The next item on the agenda is adjustments of the agenda. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are no adjustments to the agenda, sir.
All right, thank you. Next item is approval of the minutes from the September the 23rd, 2024 meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes needed? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Board Member Dupree. Is there a second? Second by Board Member Saraski. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4, public meetings. Item 4A is Town of Clayton 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. The presenter is Planning Director Conrad Almedo and Sarah Burrows from PLA Sage Design.
Good evening, Chair Moore. Before you is a Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Ms. Sarah Burrows, the consultant with Sage Design, has prepared this document and is going to be giving you a presentation. We will be asking for a recommendation that we can then take to council. This item was heard at the public hearing at council's last meeting. They've tabled any action and would like to have your recommendation on the document and then seek further action at their November 4th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad. Again, my name is Sarah Burrows with Sage Design, and we have been working with the community for over a year on this process. I really want to applaud the town on having a really thorough engagement process with the staff and with the community and our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and the council throughout the duration of the process. My goal today is to give you an overview of our findings and how we arrived at those findings on the planning process. We have gotten to the point of recommendations and action. We've taken it to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, in which they have approved the document, and we've had a work session with the council and a presentation with the council at their last session. I do want to go over our planning process, our engagement, and how we arrived at the analysis, so that when you go back to reference the document, you understand where some of the information has come from. But I do want to stress the importance of community and their involvement in this process. There was a statistically valid survey sent out, an open link survey sent out, and we had the opportunity to go out into your community a year ago at Harvest Festival, several different movies, participate in activities at the community center, and really hear what your residents had to say. We also utilized your past planning documents to make sure that what we recommended here and what we were reviewing and the way we were using terminology aligned with other planning documents in the community. And so these were the community priorities that the staff and the administrative team and the community came to. So our recommendations align with those different goals and themes. So as you go through the report, you'll see that we talk about having a connected community, economic vitality, environmental stewardship, celebration of arts and culture, health and wellness. And those really are the outcomes that Town of Clayton residents would like to see move forward for Parks and Recreation. There are two things I want to highlight on this slide that are really important moving forward, because they're outliers for national benchmarks. And that is the fact that your community has an 87% positivity on park quality of life perspective, and that 97% of your community supports parks and feels and believes that parks add value. Those are really high numbers, and it's very positive for you moving forward with any parks and recreation connectivity initiatives that you take, because your community wants those things to happen and they really feel they add value. So I just really did want to highlight that. Another one that we'll talk about in a few minutes too is that currently 81% of your community members are driving to parks, but as you'll see in the survey, almost that comparable number wants to be using greenways and walking and riding their bikes to get to your parks. So that when we talk about the gaps in service and level of service, that's how we arrive at those things, is when those things are in conflict, we understand that there's a demand that needs to be filled. The other thing I really want to stress is the joy that people get from the community programs that the town of Clayton is providing. And when we look at our program resources and what people would like to have, they would like to have more of what you're providing. So you're having a lot of success with the activities and special events and things going on at the community center. It's just that there's really increased demand for additional resources to be provided. So those are some of the highlights from the survey. The statistically valid survey takes it to another level, and they really match all of the questions to give us a priority index rating, so that we can align what they want and what they have as a gap to help us determine what is a need. So there's a really detailed survey summary outlining how we arrived at the recommendations from the statistically valid survey. This is the highlight of the drive to parks, but the greenways, trails, and trailheads are the highest priority. So I did just want to make sure that as we talk about our connectivity priorities in the plan, that was repeated throughout in our public engagement sessions from the community and within the survey. There were several different methods of analysis conducted. But as part of the actual analysis of the park facilities and the greenways, we look at the quantity, the quality, how that aligns with the themes your community highlighted as a need, and where those are distributed throughout the community. And that really helps us arrive at the recommendations. So when you get to that back section and you see we have that listing of recommendations, that's how we came to those recommendations. We also worked with Alta, and they helped us assess 2 different sub-studies as part of this effort. We did a green infrastructure analysis, and we also looked at a tourism impact analysis. And really, this helps us because it tells us something that you all probably already know as the planning board, is that your growth is really high and your land loss coverage has increased over the last 20 years. And that becomes important to us because we look at land acquisition needs for parks and recreation resources. So this helps us understand that land loss and align that with the demand and national benchmarking for what acreage is needed. The second sub-study that we got help evaluating was economic trips and access to parks. And the purpose of this was to really understand recreation tourism within the town of Clayton. And there's an entire report that helps support this, but this really, the key takeaway here is that people want to recreate in your community. They don't want to have to go out of the community. And if you want to bring people outside of Clayton into Clayton to recreate for tourism, they want to be participating in activities they can't do somewhere else. So you have this beautiful Neuse River and the Greenway. That's something that they can't necessarily do in their own community. Agricultural tourism and some of the things that make that small town quality of Clayton unique are the things that would bring people to Clayton. One programmatic example that we got from the staff was the hayride that they do. That thing fills up immediately. And that's something that people can't do on a daily basis or a regular basis programmatically. So those are the types of things that bring people into Clayton. And then we had, as part of the primary plan, we look at access to parks, and we really want to see, can your community get to a park or greenway within 10 minutes? That's how we evaluate what our needs are acreage-wise and what our needs are greenway. And so the shaded areas on the primary map illustrate to us where there are gaps in that access. So that helps us understand as you move forward with looking at land acquisition, where those areas would be a priority for the town. And then that takes us to the recommendation section. And this really is how we arrived at everything. Again, it's that piece of the puzzle. What does your community want? What are you currently providing? And what are our benchmarks? And there's a plan that's put out annually called the NRPA Agency Performance Review. And it's a phenomenal database of what communities of similar size and population are providing throughout the country. When that database started 15 years ago, it was difficult to really use as a benchmark. There's so much data in it now. It's a wonderful comparative tool, and we can really see where Clayton is falling in their providing the services. And so that really helped us arrive at the different breakdown of key recommendations. And those recommendations are listed by facilities, connectivity, programs, staffing, and land acquisition and development. I think one of the key takeaways here that I want to highlight is growth. And I believe everyone had the opportunity to read the plan, so I'm not going to go through and list every single recommendation in here, but I think the thing that really sticks out to me is just keeping up with the growth. So you have these phenomenal facilities and your community is continuing to grow, and people are moving here because they love the facilities. As the community grows, you have to keep up with the quantity and the quality that you're providing. And one of the key things that came out of the facilities aspect was the need and demand for additional indoor recreation space. The waitlisted programs, the desire for programs, 80% of the waitlisted programs are programs that are offered inside at the community center. And so you really see a strong demand for additional indoor space. This talks a little bit about that demand. The numbers in the parentheses are the waitlisted individuals and programs. And so your youth classes right now in 2023, this is the 2023 program data, showed 297 people waitlisted. Those are 297 residents that couldn't participate. And one of the things the staff really wanted to make sure everyone understood is those are the people that put themselves on the wait list. So that number is probably higher because if someone calls and says, oh, there's a wait list, a lot of people don't tend to add their name. And so those numbers are really inflated from the data that we're able to collect. So some of the specialty recreation things that came through from all of our tools of input, we're really having increased access to water, greenways and trails, indoor space, a desire for adventure and active recreation elements like open space and camping and climbing and nature-based play, community gardens. Everyone chuckles when they see miniature golf, but this is a state and national trend, so I did want to make sure you knew that. And one of those reasons is it's a wonderful intergenerational activity. And then mountain biking and pump tracks. So this is just a highlight in the report. If you saw this in the report and you're like, what? This is our NRPA metric data, and you'll see that it's broken down by population. So we utilized the 20,000 to 49,999 as our comparative population metric, but we also evaluated the ETGA metric because you're rapidly growing and you have all of these people using your facilities. And that let us arrive at, are you meeting, at, or below? So anything in red means that you're under that benchmark, anything in yellow means you're at, and anything in green means you're above. So you can see the red on there. And then we take it a step further and we look at that last column, which is Clayton demand, and that's from the survey. Is there high demand for that element, moderate, or low? So that's how you can understand how we arrived at these gaps. And the gaps become additional trails, greater access to swimming, need for indoor space, dog parks, playgrounds, basketball, multi-purpose fields, and splash pads. And those are the comparative metrics that we have in that database. So connectivity is really important, and you should have gotten an executive summary sheet in the package that you received prior to this. And there's a highlight of the greenway trails on there. This is not all of the greenway trails. Within the report, there's all of the greenway trails showing existing, proposed, and priority. But the ones that really we heard over and over again for demand were trying to get from Municipal Park into your downtown business district, trying to get from Community Park and the Community Center into your downtown business district, and then the East Clayton Park to the Neuse River and into the business district. So you can see the theme there. People want to get from their residential areas into your downtown community, and then much greater access to the river. Currently, people are using 3 different informal access locations to the Neuse River, and there's really high demand to actually have formalized access locations. I think I skipped over. So this is the comprehensive map that shows all of the proposed gaps in access to park acreage and the 3 different greenways, ones that were previously proposed, the ones that are priorities, and then existing within your system. And then I did want to highlight, this was a question from council, and so we did want to just highlight what people are willing to support with their tax dollars, and then also the support. You have really high support for funding of parks, facilities, and greenways. And so in 2019, the community passed a bond with 74% pass rate. That's really high. And so I just wanted to highlight that because that was a question from council. And then lastly is just the executive summary document that highlights everything that I just went over, and I know there's a lot of information in the report, and so we really tried to consolidate that into 2 different sheets that highlights the key takeaways from the plan, because we did a lot of analysis to arrive at this and really talked to your community and listened to your community to help guide these recommendations. So that concludes my presentation, and I know it's a lot to digest, but I would like to open it up to questions and see if there are any questions from the information you read in the report or what I just discussed.
Thank you, Ms. Burrows. Are there any questions for Ms. Burrows?
Is there any plan to present this to the county commissioners? As a taxpayer and citizen of the town of Clayton, I'm very aware that the town of Clayton is subsidizing recreation in a lot of ways in western Johnston County. And I know the current county commission has been more supportive than any previous version of a county commissioners that I've known of as far as supporting and spending money on recreation. We can tell that they've bought land and are putting millions and millions of dollars into a initiative in the Cleveland community, which is sorely needed.
Yeah.
But I hope and pray that the town council really educates and takes this great information and starts lobbying the county commissioners for help. Because the other day I was riding through Flowers Plantation and it became aware that there's really no dedicated long-term park space out there. You know, we've got a YMCA out there, but there's thousands and thousands and thousands of residents. So long term, that's going to become more and more of an issue. And I don't think that the county should expect the town of Clayton to solve all the recreation problems for western Johnston County.
I know we don't have anything formal on the agenda or calendar right now to present to the commissioners, but the county has been a stakeholder in the process, so they are familiar with the plan. And one of the outcomes of now them having the Parks and Recreation Open Space Department at the county is that they then take each of the individual municipal plans and consider those and have access to those as part of their countywide planning initiative. So I think that is an important next action step, is to make sure what the findings are communicated to the countywide level.
Yeah, I know a lot of the guys that were really involved with lobbying the county commissioners for what's going on in Cleveland. And I know a lot of the reason why they got what they got was they built awareness of the problem with the county commissioners, because you know, the way our districts are broken up, you know, you have people that do not live in a rapidly growing area that are sitting there making decisions. They don't necessarily understand the impact and that it's not only having on people not being able to participate, but also people, you know, who's paying for it. So that's my big thing as one planning board member, is to really ask the council to make sure the county commissioner are aware and to ask them for help. Because it would go a long way. Because I think we do a great job of running our programs. And I think if the county commissioners just invested in land and, you know, gave it for us to run programs, you know, that would go a long way. So I'm excited because the county commissioners have stepped up greatly, but I think that they've got to do more. So
I think awareness is key. So I think that's a very good point.
Besides that, I think everything's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bland?
So I was reading about the land acquisition that's going to be necessary, and that's a lot of acreage. And I don't know where you're planning to go with that. Have you guys looked at that? Do you have an idea of which direction that would go?
So I think the study's purpose was to understand the gaps and where did the town fit above. I think in the immediate term, there was like an approximate 100-acre deficit in comparative land, recreation land. And the way that's broken down, there was a question at the council about the consideration of greenways. That was considered, and that comparison is held differently based on mileage. So the acreage is purely the recreation access acreage land. And so that is a deficit of 100 acres immediately, and then that concurrently grows over the 10-year period. And so the goal then would be to allocate or assess land in those gaps. So where there currently is no access, those would be the points of acreage to look for, and as to where you would go in obtaining acreage. And that can be done, you know, there are opportunities to do that through partnership, there's acquisition opportunities, but that next step would be to evaluate where can that potentially happen in those gap areas.
What I was thinking is that one of the main topics we're discussing is connectivity. And to find enough acreage, we may compromise some connectivity is what I was thinking. Obviously, I'm not looking at what you guys are seeing, but we don't have a lot of land inside Clayton.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Applewhite?
Did y'all identify specific parcels or tracts of land when you were looking at the 400 acres over 10 years, and then you map the needed locations or the areas that might need it the most or have the most demand? Did y'all track specific parcels?
We did not go parcel specific on it. We looked at areas. So there's a heat map that was done as part of the Parks, Greenways, and Pedestrian Access Study. And what that did is it looked at trips and how people could get to the existing park acreage. And so we worked backwards as to where that access didn't happen. And so we understand how people can currently get to parks and where they're going. And we just looked at the geographic area. We did not break it down then into parcel by parcel.
So that would be another study perhaps to identify specific parcels.
Within those regions, yeah.
Okay. And would that be part of a comprehensive trails plan or something like that? Or would that be a separate study altogether? I'm looking over the staff.
It could be as part of a trails plan if you're looking at the connectivity piece. I think you would also need to evaluate that park, the actual park acreage piece.
Okay. I have another question, if that's okay. Sure. It may be another recommendation. I think, to James's point, I think it would be a good idea to add a recommendation, perhaps under the land acquisition section, that would encourage decision makers to work with the county, or to maybe not lobby would be the right word, but encourage the town and the county to come together on whether it's a comprehensive trails plan that the county is going to embark on, participating in that process, or just thinking about the regional parks and recreation needs and how they're going to have to be serviced. Because to his point earlier, Flowers is an area that's growing, that is drawing probably some of the in-town folks that would like to participate in these programs, pulling them out because they're paying the extra bit to participate. But I think that would be a wise recommendation, and I don't know if we need to advise that or if the council would like to do that at their next meeting. But I think some verbiage included in this plan to encourage that cooperation would be warranted.
We can certainly do that. I think the goal in meeting with you is to get those recommendations for action and approval. So that's something at this point we can add into the plan.
That would be good. Thank you.
Mr. Gleason?
I guess in any given year, how does the funding to allocate it for this, how can it be divvied up from year to year depending on what happens? Because just based on my industry, NC 42 is at some point scheduled to be widened at some point in time. So, usually with NCDOT, there's an agreement that happens either with the municipality or the county on completing the Complete Streets Act. So that's obviously presents itself as a great opportunity to get a multi-use path or some sort of greenway out to western Clayton or southwestern Clayton along NC 42, and you have it listed as one of those big gap areas.
Yeah.
So I guess with NCDOT projects coming through where they do plan on doing those, how does that factor into the overall plan? Is it something that gets added and then you can reallocate funds, or is it something that's just not really considered until the opportunity presents itself?
I think that having it plan to plan, so some of this information came from the planning efforts you've already done. Some of these elements were identified in the pedestrian planning efforts that you've done, and this is building upon that based on the information we got from the community. So that helps with NCDOT and trying to get that funding, because it is showing up plan to plan to plan. And so that really helps justify adding that to your priorities list as projects move forward. And I think that from a funding standpoint, the approach is going to have to be taking a variety of tools. So at the back of the document, we talk about the multiple tools that are available for funding. And the next step would be, okay, this is going to take utilizing multiple tools in order to implement them. And then Scott and I were just talking about the fact that we look at those immediate action item needs and start to break down costs. So that would be the next step.
And then kind of like a follow-up, especially since for the rest of us, as a couple months ago, we had the Gateway 42 conversation. And since that was approved, how can the two connect to kind of create those gaps and provide funding either from in lieu of developers and things like that? Is that kind of all in the plan too? Has it been considered?
I'm going to defer to planning on that because I'm not as familiar with the other project.
It sounds like there's some discussion about connectivity and greenways, and I would look for that in the new comprehensive transportation plan that we are currently working on. The consultants, what your comments are today are kind of echoing or confirming what we're also working with that comprehensive transportation plan. So maybe that would be a good opportunity to make sure when this plan is adopted, we can certainly take what recommendations are in the new plan and include that to the best in the new comprehensive transportation plan.
Mr. Sarowski.
So we talked a little bit about costs. Is there, as part of the recommendations of this, is there going to be a priority list? I didn't see one in here as far as like a kind of A to Z priority list.
So in the back, it's broken down, there's an action item list, and it's broken down into 0 to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 to 10. Right. And so that's really that priority list. And then we would take that a step further and say, okay, if we look at everything in 0 to 2, how much might that cost? And that would help then evaluate what action steps are needed.
And that cost hasn't been assessed yet, right?
No.
As far as I
correct.
understand. Okay. But in your toolbox, you're talking about how we can pay for some of those things.
Yes.
And in coordination with what Board Member Gleason said, one of the tools in the toolbox, I don't know if you guys, I didn't see it either. This was a long document, so I apologize. Is the use of developer agreements. Is that one of the tools that is in our toolbox? Because other communities have used that as a way to get funds towards parks and other greenways and things and sidewalks.
We didn't specifically recommend ordinance changes, but you already have some in place for land dedication within that ordinance. So that would definitely be a tool that you can use.
Okay. And then has there been a plan to do a user cost study on the current fees for activities as we get more into projects and talk about operations, maintenance, those sorts of things? I mean,
That wasn't part of this plan. Typically,
Okay.
those are done separately, fee studies. It looks at everything. It looks at staffing, salaries, operations, costs, program costs, and things like that. And I don't know if that's something that the department's looking at or not, but that's not done as part of this planning effort.
Yeah, I'm asking that question because it seems like that would be one of the next logical steps for this if we're trying to figure out ways to pay for some of the things. Maybe you need to do a fee study, see if we're charging enough or not a lot, or if they're within the town limits or without the town limits. I'll just go on record saying I'd be willing to pay more to use a community center. So I think a lot of people would if they knew what the service was that was coming out of it and the other things that are being done by the town. So I just wanted to make sure that was one of those things that was happening. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Bland?
So Clayton has a pretty successful program with Clayton High School. It's a partnership between the county and the town and the school. That the town gets to use their facilities. And it's worked really well. There's baseball, there's football, soccer, lacrosse, everything that the kids want to do is available there. That, of course, is the only, other than Cooper, which doesn't have the same number of facilities, the only one that's in town. But when you start talking about swimming and that type thing, there is, maybe this is more of a comment than a question, but there's a tremendous need for the high schools to have that as well, not just Clayton, but throughout the county. That may be a way to encourage the county to help us. Everything obviously is not going to be in Clayton city limits. We need pools because of the competitions. And that puts you in the gym to play basketball. It puts you on the baseball field for your little league. So those opportunities could expand out at least as far as Clayton Middle School, perhaps. So that's another way of looking at utilizing what you have, maybe expanding it with some county participation. I don't know if that's been discussed. It might not be a possibility, but I guess I'm asking, have we looked at that?
So we have talked about the partnership access. That was part of the quantity evaluation and how much you can access those programs. Typically, when you evaluate a partnership program like that, you're at about a 25% access compared to 100% access facility. So if the town owned something, it would have 100% access. Usually, if you have a school partnership, it's about 25% because of the utilization of the need of the facilities for the schools. But I do think that long-term, when you're looking at larger facilities like swimming pools and things like that, it is always a good conversation to have for partnerships, financially moving forward for the outlay of the project. So.
Thank you. I support Mr. Liscombe. In fact, I had a sidebar conversation with a couple of board members with that exact same query, question, and response. So I don't know if we can add it as a recommendation or a suggestion to council, but I fully support your thoughts. I do have one question. One of the growing phenomenons for a lot of municipalities, well, several municipalities, especially smaller municipalities, and I don't know if it even came up, I didn't read it, was looking at sports tourism as far as economic development. And I didn't see, and maybe I missed it, and like I said, it was a lot of pages, and I tried to read every one, but of course you can miss a sentence or a paragraph. And that may have not been part of the perspectives in this document, but was sports tourism looking at any type of facilities, whether it's for outdoor sports and or indoor sports looked at? Because if you look at this side of the county, going back east, I know there are some towns around us that are looking, of course, Cary is getting ready to build a big facility, but when you come back this way, you go back to Rocky Mount, I know Goldsboro is looking at something in Wilson, but sports tourism has become a huge thing now.
So that's part of that sport tourism study that's a sub-study of this. So that full report will be in the appendix. There was just a write-up of that report within the report itself. And the takeaway from that study was just that in order to get people into Clayton, it would have to be something that's different. And the things that were highlighted in that study that they demonstrated would create that drive to come into the community would be access to something that's different, like the Neuse River or camping, ropes courses, adventure recreation. Those were some of the things that were found that would bring people to the community. What they found wasn't bringing people to the community was other sports fields and things that they can particularly get in their own community. So the trips, they did a trips analysis in which they looked at what was bringing people out of Raleigh, and it wasn't, people weren't coming out of Raleigh to go to soccer fields, and they weren't coming out of Raleigh to go to different baseball fields. It was, they were staying in that region. So it was the activities that were unique that were causing people to leave or would cause them to come into Clayton. I don't know if that helps answer that question, but there was an evaluation done of access to sports tourism, what some of those opportunities may be within the town.
Okay, looking at the smaller sports, because the things that you named are the smaller sports, not the big revenue generating sports.
Correct. We did
Right.
not look at like professional sports. That wasn't like
No, I'm talking about like some of the facilities now, the indoor sports where they can do volleyball year round, 18 to 20 courts running. And
Right.
I'm not going to name the municipality, but it's a small municipality that's big in sports tourism. And I've been down there, and it's just been a force multiplier for that little community. And,
Right.
and that community started it. And I've seen larger municipalities trying to emulate that now.
And that would be something that's different that someone can't get in another community. So that would be an example of something out of this report, that it's basically something that you can't find in your region or in an adjacent region that would drive that destination tourism.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
I appreciate all your questions. Thank you. All right, do you have any questions? Are you good?
No, staff doesn't have any more questions. I think we'll ask for
Public comment.
a recommendation. Staff is recommending, and I'm sorry?
Public comment? Public comment.
I'm sorry. Yeah, public comments.
Okay. I was waiting for her to leave the podium.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm doing like, I'll stop talking.
That's fine. Are we opening up to public comment?
Just for a matter of the record, the public hearing was closed, but you could open up the public comments if you'd like
Oh, it's
to.
already had the public hearing.
The public hearing, yeah, was already held by council at their
Okay.
last meeting, but if the board wanted to hear some public comments for a recommendation, they're more than welcome to. It's not required, though.
No, we don't need it. Okay. That being said, I'll turn it over to the board for their consideration. Are there any comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll say one thing I did like about the plan was the emphasis on the Neuse River. I think that's a unique asset to the Clayton community, and then the trails and the Greenway network that we have has brought people in. I talked to a gentleman at the brewery down the road, and he came from Wake County on his bike. It was a 22-mile trip, and he enjoyed a beverage and then took his bike back to Wake County. So I think there are people that are coming in, and those assets between the Neuse River and the Greenway system is something we really need to lean heavily into. Maybe not a ropes course, but perhaps there are things that we can double down on the assets that we have. And to that point, I hope that the town can continue to invest in good staff for our Parks and Recreation Department, so that they can carry out the programs for the community.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just want to make one quick comment.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a great plan, and I agree with Derek a little bit that we almost need more of a focus on greenways, like a standalone greenway plan, to show those. One of the things in the plan that was talked about was connections to neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I think we need to focus more on that. In that kind of more focused plan. I think this is great to show the gaps and then focus on that. And then to echo something that was said earlier about, working with NCDOT and having a plan for NCDOT, I do want to remind everyone that the Shotwell intersection improvements has hardly any additional sidewalks and no crossing of 70. So that's a mistake that we cannot make any longer. We have to have things in plan so that when these roadway plans are done, we can then show them, hey, look, we have a plan. This needs to go in there. It's kind of a shame. I've looked at those plans. They have no sidewalks crossing 70. It's part of that plan. So anything we can do to further that so that that doesn't happen again.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to either recommend or not recommend Town of Clayton 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan to Town Council. You have before you motions for consistency statements. The Planning Board may choose one of the 4 suggested motions below. Please take an opportunity to read over them, and then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve consistent with the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan. I make the motion to recommend approval of the 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan based on the consistency with the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan, in that Chapter 5, Think Parks, Recreation, and Natural Resources, provides goals, policies, and strategies that are supported in the proposed 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Policy PR 3.2 calls to implement and regularly update the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and Chapter 9, Action as in Implementation Steps for Goal PR 3 calls for updating the existing Parks and Recreation Master Plan. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, in that the Comprehensive Growth Plan calls for the update to the Town of Clayton 2013 Parks and Recreation Master Plan as an implementation step, and the 2024 Parks and Recreation Master Plan supports the goals, policies, strategies found in Chapter 5 of the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan.
We have a motion for approval by Board Member Applewhite. Is there a second?
I'll second, and I would like to,
Second
Throw
by
out.
Board Member Liscum with an addendum.
I would like to add an addendum, if you would accept it, is just to specifically state that we would recommend that the council be aggressive on educating the county and asking for assistance, because the Town of Clayton and the Town of Clayton residents have made a huge commitment to Parks and Rec, and we're continuing to, and we need as much help as we can to provide services. So that was my recommended modification.
We have a second with the addendum. The staff capture that? You did. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4B, 2024-58, RZ-WC 8121 US 70, business industrial, rezoning of properties from the residential large lot and corridor commercial zoning districts to the heavy industrial zoning district. We're now here from staff.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Board. Ms. Audrey Deschamps will be making the presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, Planning Board members, Mr. Moore, the Chair. I'm here today to present to you a request about a conventional rezoning. This request is concerning 3 lots, so 3 different properties. And the applicant wants to rezone those properties that are CRM right now and RLL to AV Industrial HID. So you'll see on the next slide, you'll see there's a situation where 2 of the 3 lots have 2 different districts on them. So that's going to be on the next slide. So 2 of the 2 larger lots are about 12 acres, and the smaller one is half an acre. So 3 of them are about 25 acres. The existing use right now is residential in vacancy. So the 2 larger lots are vacant, and the smaller one on the top on the north side has a single family dwelling unit on it. So like I said, there's 3 lots. And for the location of it, it's on 70 Business Industrial and in front of Powhatan Road. So as you can see right now, there's 2 lots with 2 different districts on it. And the smaller lot on the north is a CRM. So we have CRM and RLL both together. On the north side, with some notes here. On the north side, we approved that rezoning not so long ago, I think last year, to heavy industrial, and now it's home to NIPIDE. I don't know if I said that right. That company, NIPIDE, is specialized in truck equipment. On the left side, we have Del Toro, which is a concrete. They're specializing in the installation of concrete. And at the south, we have Hales Group, is specialized in the structural steel equipment. So right now, there's 3 posted sign location, 1 for each lot. So about the consistency in the with the comprehensive growth plan, the vision for our town for 2045, right now is employment center for the future land use map, which indicate a, oh, that's not the good. Oh, thank you. But yeah, so now we have HID though in the UDO, that little paragraph, it's in the UDO, but it should be the comprehensive plan to show you what implement center is and not the HID, heavy industrial. But the applicant wished to rezone to HID, which I'm pretty sure you know has some high impact uses associated to it. And I don't know if I can say it, but encouraged use would be more permitted use in the HID, would be more of a light or heavy equipment sales, vehicle repairs and body work, electrical, plumbing, warehouse, and storage. And for the employment center, I think it was, I don't know off to my head right now, but in the comprehensive plan, we are encouraging employment center to be, having more, employees on site and be able to have those areas in the town where we're more into industrial employment. Sorry for that. There's supposed to be the thing for the comprehensive plan. So one consideration to have is that it's a conventional rezoning. So because of that, if the town council wants to approve that request, that would mean that would allow all permitted use within the heavy industrial, the HID, right now in the UDO to be permitted on the site with, of course, proper documentation and time, but just a consideration to have in mind. For the staff recommendation, the staff planning recommends approval for the proposed rezoning request. So that means a motion 1 on the provided consistency statement sheet, as you can see on the screen.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Thank you. Appreciate it. Would the applicant like to speak?
My name is Tim.
My name is Tim Wepperman. I'm the local representative for Wiley Capital, the ownership team, and I just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to present this request on the October agenda. I didn't have any specific comments I wanted to make about our rezoning application, but just thank you very much for your time and the ability to present this request.
All righty. Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Mr. Applewhite?
It might be more appropriate for staff, but I know it's the rezoning, but I want to make sure that there isn't, given the use as requested, I think I saw somewhere they were looking at perhaps distribution warehouse, that there aren't a tremendous amount of 18-wheelers that hang out there along the right-of-way and park in the road. That's been an issue in other areas, and I don't know if there's if there's a plan to make sure that there's plenty of parking on site so that folks aren't backed up onto the road or parked out there if they have tractor trailers, 18-wheelers.
Yeah, there's not currently a site plan that's been finalized, but that's certainly something, speaking as a part of the civil engineers as well, that we would certainly take into consideration and make sure that the queuing does not back up onto the road.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
If I can add to this too, we'll make sure that if there's a traffic impact analysis to do, we'll make sure that he's doing one just to assess the situation.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Are there any questions?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. This is not is this a public comment?
I'm sorry, yes, sir. This is a public meeting.
Right, that's what I was thinking. She was still standing there. Are there any public comments on this matter? Is there any member of the public would like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, I'll turn it over to the board for their consideration. Are there any comments from the board?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr.
So Audrey, you said this is a conventional rezoning, right? And under section 2.3.8, it says that application shall include a traffic assessment. So is there not one required with this right now for us to make this decision, or is it coming when we get a site plan?
Yeah, so it's going to come with the site plan.
And just for the record, that would be if the use requires it, if it gets triggered.
Because this is a little confusing because it says that in the application it's supposed to be included with the conventional rezoning. So is that not, I just want to get some clarification on that. It's 2.3.8.
So the conventional zoning request does not include a traffic impact analysis. That I want to say the UDO, we might need to clarify that requirement because we don't know what use is going to be occurring with the request. So therefore it's just at this time. So when it does come in, if there was a conditional rezoning, in that case, yes.
Okay.
Because the use is associated and we could, for example, if you're having residential units or business uses, but in this case, there's no use. So we're just looking at a conventional rezoning.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I entertain a motion to either recommend or not recommend 2024-58-RZ-WC 8121 US 70 Business Industrial, rezoning of properties from residential large lot and corridor commercial zoning districts to heavy industrial zoning districts to the town council.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve consistent with the 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan. I make a motion to recommend approval of this rezoning request based on consistency with the future land use map in the adopted 2045 Comprehensive Growth Plan, in that the properties are designated as employment center in the future land use map. Goal LU1 moves to preserve Clayton's character while allowing for growth and development in appropriate areas. Policy LU 1.3 seeks to encourage non-residential land use in areas consistent with the future land use map. Policy LU 1.4 seeks to encourage new business and non-residential development in employment centers designated on the future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, in that the comprehensive growth plan encourages industrial use in this area. The request is compatible with existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Thank you. We have a motion by Board Member Liscombe to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Williams. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item is item 4C, 2024-47-CZM, Novo Nordisk Art Center rezoning property from the light industrial to the conditional commercial zoning district. We're now here from staff.
Good evening, Mr. Chair Moore and members of the Planning Board. This is a request for a rezoning from light industrial to conditional commercial. The property is bisected by GLP one way. It's about 82 acres in size, and just in the brief, it is a Novo Nordisk Art Center. So it's meant to be a facility that is going to be used by Novo Nordisk employees. It will have several uses that were not originally allowed by permitted uses by right in the light industrial zoning district. Hence, we're going before you with a conditional rezoning. Sorry, 1 second, my technical difficulties. The current zoning, again, is light industrial. It's surrounded by other light industrial properties, some residential large lot zoning districts, and also by Johnston County. The North Carolina Railroad is that line that is running in this kind of east-west direction, and the main Novo Nordisk campus is to the north of that area. The majority of the property is vacant. This is the proposed zoning map. Conditional is commercial, and the future land use map is employment center. Okay. Pardon me as I zoom through the So the site is pretty much going to be an entrance from the public right of way, accessing parking lot areas. There's a main building here. I want to say it's going to have some fitness centers. It's multi-level building. You'll have a pool, outdoor uses occurring on the site as well, and a future daycare use. You'll note that all these uses are listed in the conditions of approval. Otherwise, the lot will, at this point, will be largely undisturbed. These are some conceptual building elevations provided by the applicant. You notice on the right-hand side, there are some of the UDO standards, non-residential design standards that the applicant has checked off as meeting satisfying the UDO requirements. However, I do want to indicate that a subsequent site plan will be required and building elevations will be required, and actual UDO analysis will be conducted at that time. Some additional elevations of the campus. They will have entrances on the north side and the south side of the building. Here's a floor plan showing, this is all conceptual as well, just to give you an idea of what kind of uses will be occurring on the site. Looks like an indoor basketball court and some workout areas. The applicants are here as well, and they can further elaborate on the uses that will be occurring. These are the conditions of approval in draft form. They do highlight the minimum requirements of the UDO. The uses are articulated in condition number 5. There are some other uses that are not expressly indicated in the UDO, but they were included with the intent that to provide any clarification and future uses, just to make sure that we're all kind of not missing anything with interpretation. The building is intended to be gold certified with the leadership in energy and environmental design standards. So that's a pretty high quality construction. It's the United States Green Building Council. So in doing so, they are receiving, they would be receiving what are called the sustainability and development incentives in the UDO. It's not a requirement, but the applicant is going to be providing a building that meets that standard. With regards to fencing, there's an extra condition regarding the maximum height of the fence, since it will be located in front of the building, just to prevent any conflict with UDO requirements for the height fence, for the height of the fence. The following are recommended conditions from staff for the planning board's consideration. This would just further clarify the minimum enhancements that the building would also provide. You can tell that the building elevations are already meeting some of these requirements, but this is just further cementifying that commitment to the building's high architectural standard. There's also 2 other conditions that are relating to the perimeter buffer around the property, and also the minimum number of plantings for the streetscape buffer. I will note that the applicant has not agreed to these conditions. These are an after the fact kind of discussion, just to provide that goal of having a higher enhanced quality development, which the project already is. This is a type 3 conditional zoning request for the record. With that, I would like to also just lastly note that there was a clerical error with regards to the minimum radius required for a neighborhood meeting. The applicant brought this to my attention. Staff has discussed this item. I wanted to let the board know that instead of a 300-foot radius provided for the neighborhood meeting, only a 100-foot radius was done. However, that radius number was in our application. We did not want to use it to impede the progress of their application. With that, though, we did do a notice of 300 foot to the surrounding property owners for this neighborhood for this public meeting today. So with that, the staff is recommending approval with motion number 1, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
I have a question.
Yeah, Boardman Dupree.
You said the 300 feet, when it changed from 100 to 300, how many more people did that entail?
I'm not exactly 100% sure. there are a lot of large properties in the area. I do have the notice there. But they would be hopefully showing up today if they received the letter. But I'm not sure exactly how many more that was in.
They're here, we'll let them speak then, man. I just wondered. That's
Yes,
fine.
sir.
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Gleason?
Can I make a condition upon approval?
Yeah, the board can entertain additional conditions for consideration, but technically the applicant and the council will have to agree upon those conditions, but yes.
Considering that this is such a large parcel, I guess combined, and the fact that it was a giant missed opportunity that it wasn't done on Powhatan Road when Novo adjusted their first facility, I'd like to make it a requirement that they put a multi-use path along Gordon Road over the entire length of their property. Especially since there's neighborhoods over there too, so it could be used for future connections, especially with Wilson's Mills governing the area as well, and the fact that Gordon Road was also realigned for the US 70 I-42 construction. So that'd be a condition that I want to add in.
I do want to speak to that. Let's go look at the site plan. So this is the frontage that you're speaking of right here along Gordon Road. The town could, I want to say that we would require that improvements be made to this right of way based on the 2045 comprehensive plan. There is also an option for a fee in lieu if that's something that is not feasible at the time of the development to occur, but a condition could be proposed that improvements be made or fee in lieu accepted based on, is that what you're proposing?
You might need to repeat that, but yes, I think in fee of lieu would be kind of perfect for that situation, just to improve they have such a large frontage there along the road that connecting like one property away from 70 business, pretty much all the way through their property across the intersection there, because at least it shows as far as the conditional rezoning that it's 3 separate pieces. The only thing that they wouldn't be able to do would be the Wilson's Mills Fire Station, which isn't shown on this sheet. It's to the right of that. But that would be a pretty significant amount if we could get that as an act for approval.
Okay.
Connor, I have a second question. Your cursor's right over it now, the fee to be submitted in lieu. What is that pointing to? What is that referring to the road improvements? And
Yes. That looks like it's the fee to be submitted in lieu of design that adheres to 2045 comprehensive growth plan. So I'm thinking that is pointing to the right of way that is on GLP one way. But I want to say that we have that fee in lieu for Gordon Road. So it could be that.
yeah, I'm getting a nod and affirmation from, I believe it's staff, and if they want to clarify in a moment, they can do it. When we get to that section. I just saw it on the plans earlier and I wasn't sure what fee that was referring to. I wanted to make sure it wasn't double dipping over there.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things that we've talked about in the comprehensive transportation plan meetings is how there's really not a connection between Gordon and Powhatan. And one of the things we talked about was could we lengthen Bestwood Drive to go all the way across to GLP one way so that there is that connection, so you don't have to go all the way to 70 business, turn, you just have a connection, basically like a back connection, a backage road, that sort of thing. Will this plan hinder that from potentially happening? Because the one thing I'm noticing is there's a lot of wetlands around this site. And if this is the only part that's not wetlands, are we missing an opportunity to make that connection with this site plan?
That's a good question. I don't think that we've included that in this plan with any right-of-way dedication through the property. And I'm not 200% sure. Let me go back to the aerial.
This property doesn't touch that roadway. I don't believe, but if you put it in the next property to the north, which is also owned by Novo, we may not be able to put a road there because of wetlands. So that's all I'm saying is that are we missing an opportunity now to be able to do something at least to reserve a part of that so that that future connection can be made at some point in the future.
So to orientate myself here, is it a road up here that you're talking
That one
about?
you got the hand on. Yep. Because there's the only other way to get across the railroad tracks on Gordon is Wilson's Mills. You have to go all the way down. So if Gordon develops like we all think it's going to develop, every single person that has to go to Powhatan is either going to have to go to Wilson's Mills or go on the 70. And that's a stress on 70 that if we can avoid that with any way with a quote unquote package road or some other connection between the properties, it would be great to have, because then you're really putting a lot of stress on those two intersections at Gordon and Powhatan if you don't have that in the future.
I would say that that's not a part of this project at the moment, but the comp transportation plan might be the area to discuss, to entertain that concept. Having any additional right of way through this property or connection was not discussed. It's not a part of this project right here, but this one.
I understand that. I'm saying, can we request that or the applicant tells us how that road can be connected without the use of this property? My only worry is we're going to miss an opportunity.
Okay.
That's the worry.
I think it might be let's have the applicant respond to that question.
Okay. Thank you.
And I can do a little research on the side.
Yeah, I just want to bring it for awareness.
What I'd like to do is look at the comp transportation plan draft that we have for this area, and I can respond to you, hopefully.
Okay. I know we talked about it in the last meeting that we had, so hopefully it's included on there.
Okay.
Mr. Liscombe?
I'm very much for this project, but personally, I think that we might be overstepping our boundaries some, because, we've got a private company that's got a campus that they put together out here, and I don't think that we need to be telling them how to develop internal to their property lines. So I'm very interested to hear what Novo says, but I'm very supportive of Novo. I appreciate them being here and locating in Johnston County, and I do not want to personally ask them to do anything more that's within our adopted plans at this point.
Any other comments or questions for staff? All right, thank you. If not, we'll hear from the applicant, if the applicant would like to speak.
Chairman, Board, my name is Donald Parker. I'm representing Novo Nordisk. I've been a member of Clayton community for about 27 years, grew up in Wilmington. I worked at another pharmaceutical company, Grifols, for 25 years, brought me to Clayton many years ago, and I've raised my family here, coached sports. I also helped start Johnson United Soccer Association, which town of Clayton and them were partners and still are for the last 20 plus years. So hearing a lot about recreation tonight does my heart good. And I've got the pleasure to be the project manager on the Mads Uvlason Art Center project for Novo Nordisk. And I've also got my team here tonight, great team. Gil Bain is our general contractor. Hanbury is one of our architects. And this project, sounds to me like, I hear think Clayton a lot, and I'm around Clayton. And Novo Nordisk, we have a saying like that, the Novo Nordisk way. And like how I believe Clayton wants to have a unique place for people to come and live, we're in a great situation because our plant's in Clayton, and we got a great city, a lot of good amenities to bring people to. Obviously, we have room for improvement, and Novo wants to be like Clayton, the place that we are able to get a lot of pharmaceutical people in this area, especially in Raleigh. We're able to bring them this way and bring them away from Raleigh, Durham some, because we have such a great town of Clayton beside us. And like I said, it's one of the reasons I've stayed here. I've had many opportunities to go to Raleigh or to go other cities close by, and I've chosen to stay here because I love I love the feel of the small town, but you have a lot of amenities, and it really speaks to me, and I think it speaks to a lot of people, and it's why Novo's growing in the town of Clayton. But I've recently left Grifols and gone to Novo for almost a year now, and like I said, this is a project that Novo wants to also bring to help attract and keep attracting, to keep bringing people to this community. You know, we want to be the place that people want to come to work, and so this amenity center is something that we've done a lot of studying on and a lot of investigation inside of our company, and we realize that this is something that a lot of employees are looking for. So Novo has decided to invest some money in this facility, and it's a great facility. I think it'll help fill some of the needs that we have in this area with the Novo employees, and I think it continues to bring and attract people to this area. So, you know, I'm excited to be on. I've done a lot of projects, installed chillers and boilers and all kind of stuff, and warehouses and a lot of stuff, but you know, like I said, this is a unique project, and I think we've put into the design and going to make it a great facility. It'll be, you know, a very nice facility for this area. I know there was a couple of questions. As you all know, Novo is expanding. We do have a comprehensive traffic study for this whole area that, you know, includes our site master plan that goes out 10 years. And looks at, you know, improvements that need to be made, where there's some congestion spots, and actually selecting this site had some influence why we selected this site. We originally were looking at putting the site at a different location on Powhatan that's already heavily stressed. So, you know, and that location may have been a little bit better for our employees, but because of that, that was one of the reasons we selected this other location. I do know that, you know, Novo is very open and would encourage working with the town, you know, on some of those options and not stressing traffic where we can. You know, I can't promise or make any commitments to that. I can only speak to this one project. And there currently aren't any, except for Mr. Sarasky, you're right. There's a lot of wetlands around there, and that's basically the one good building site that we have. And we plan to utilize it and put a lot of facilities in there. We have a great outdoor space. We're planning an outdoor pool, a future daycare in a phase 2, maybe. You know, putting range. We have a place for an outdoor amphitheater. So, you know, we're going to trying to listen to our employees and bring some of those amenities to them so that they want to stay in this area and raise their families here like I did. Any other questions?
Any questions from the board to the applicant?
Yep, I have one.
Mr. Liscombe?
So is this an employee family, like is a open to the family also? Is it employee only type situation?
So initially it's employees and their immediate family and past employees. So someone that retired 5 years ago from Novo would be welcome to come as well. We certainly have thought it's not in the current plan, but at some point we may entertain having guests come as well. So, you know, depending on the uses and how it goes and where it ends up, you know, that's certainly something we've considered is, you know, Johnny's 10-year-old son probably wants to bring his buddy that lives next door to the pool. So that's not in the plan now, but, you know, it could be.
Mr. Applewhite?
Yeah, that was my question as well. If that was going to be an option for folks to bring guests, or if there would be any thought in the future of membership for folks that aren't employed. And I don't know if that's in the plans, but just curiosity.
It's currently not in the plans. You know, like I said, Novo is, you know, from what I've seen working there less than a year, they really put forward their employees and also sustainability and also growth in the local community. And so, you know, we'd be open to continued discussions on that. But right now, you know, we do have to keep in mind, you know, that there's, you know, some capacity limitations on what we have there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Dupree?
How many employees does Novo have now there? Clayton.
Can I defer that to somebody who knows that number a little bit better?
Hi, Nicole Nebo with Novo Nordisk. I do Alliance Development and Social Responsibility. We have a little more than 2,500 employees.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bland?
So a few months ago, there was a lot of discussion locally, I don't know if it was relevant or not, but about the security for the facility, espionage, whatever. But security regardless. And there was an effort to push back that line of accessibility. Would having a multi-use option around your property be a problem with you?
For this facility, no. I mean, obviously where we make the drugs and our products, security is a very big concern. You know, for this, you know, it's the typical risk that you would have with a facility like this. So yeah, I mean, we won't be putting up fences that have, you know, motion detectors on them and that kind of stuff. It'll, you know, it'd be more of a recreation facility. So, and that's what it's intended for. There, you know, the parcel just to the right of the land is cleared, and the two parcels below are planning to stay light industrial. So we're rezoning, you know, a portion of it to CZC.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this matter? Please come state your name and your address, and remember you have 3 minutes.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Aaron Sy. I'm a resident of 86 Grand Court. I'm one of the houses that is conveniently within the 300-foot radius, but not within the 100-foot radius. So I had no idea that this was going on. I suspect that was slightly intentional, just given the history of the rezoning of this area initially to light industrial. I just want to make a couple of really quick comments just to kind of have this on the record. So I do acknowledge that this is absolutely in keeping with the comprehensive land use, the comprehensive plan, development plan for 2045. This is definitely an employment center, and this would align with that. But just some really quick points to make. So I live in the subdivision that is just to the south of this area. We were not thrilled when this got rezoned in the first place to light industrial because it is directly across the street from us. I am reassured now that I know that it is just the area to the west of GLP one way. So that is exciting for me that this isn't going to be directly across the street because we already have the fire station. My children love the 2 a.m. fire trucks. That is not that great, but we're living with it. But one thing I want the board, this planning committee to be really cognizant of is the fact that we recently had a rezoning request through Johnston County, and there is a massive tract of land that was purchased behind our subdivision that was potentially going to be rezoned as industrial. And the site plan actually would have placed huge industrial warehouses and 18-wheelers within about 75 feet of one of the houses in my neighborhood. And so that is not a great use of land around that area. And if we keep the front and the Novo Nordisk property is light industrial and that conditional commercial zoning over there, and then that tract, I fully expect that tract will eventually get rezoned. They will finally make a way to make it happen. Our subdivision will be landlocked on all four sides with industrial and commercial use land, and we will have no other residential communities. One other interesting point I wanted to make, and she's not here anymore, but I wanted to thank the Parks and Rec person, because they highlighted that our subdivision is smack dab in the middle of that giant circle of a gap of recreational activities. There is nothing near our subdivision for my kids to do. We have to drive a significant distance. Sadly, most of the time down to Smithfield and Selma. That may have been that small area that Mr. Moore was talking about. I don't know about the recreation and sports tourism down there, but we have to go a considerable distance to get to anything. I know, Ms. Bland, you made the excellent point. We're going to have to eventually get real estate to build some of these, some of these types of activities, these, recreational places. There are some great parcels directly across the street from my subdivision. And so otherwise, Mr. Applewhite, during a previous planning meeting a couple of months ago, I just read an article about it while I was sitting down. You made a comment about the incompatibility of some of these subdivisions coming in. Subdivisions, I think it was Old Mill Stream, is a larger lot, and then there was a small lot subdivision going in right nearby. You had concerns about buffer. There is no buffer between my subdivision and this light industrial right directly across the street. Mr. Gleason, you are my new favorite person ever. When this initially, and I just want to bring this up for people who are not aware of the background of when this was rezoned as light industrial. So it was the Waltham Group that presented this, Mr. Norwood Thompson, and he said that they were trying to create shovel-ready land. A few short months after, it was announced that a 4.1 or a multi-billion-dollar Novo Nordisk facility was going to be built there. There is no way that information was not known to the town of Clayton or to Mr. Thompson. So it kind of left a bad taste in our mouth. We did have a neighborhood meeting, and I was invited to that neighborhood meeting. I was not invited to this neighborhood meeting because of that clerical oversight. So that would have been helpful. But, that is what our history. When that meeting took place, I came to this exact meeting in front of this same committee, and my request was that very same thing, that they build maybe like a trail just along Gordon Road. Right now, Gordon Road's a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. I will never, ever let my kids ride their bikes. I have a 6- and 9-year-old. They will be killed if they ride their bikes on Gordon Road. There are also a lot of people who like to race on Gordon Road. So that would be immensely helpful. I would also recommend maybe like a park across there. Novo Nordisk is a company worth $440 billion. I am a nurse manager. I am acutely aware of the pricing disparities between the US and other markets for the drugs that they manufacture, the absolutely negative impact that it is having on the healthcare industry as a whole in the US. It is a massively profitable company. There is no way that it is absolutely feasible for them to be able to afford to put that trail all the way along the edge of that property, all along Gordon Road. That would make this far more palatable. And I think it would also go towards that Parks and Rec grand plan of having at least some form of recreation near my house. That would be great for my kids. And then, so that is it. I just wanted to kind of get that on your radar so that as you think about this, because this is the southeastern tip of Clayton and their jurisdiction. And so once all 3 of these parcels are used up, there is no more opportunity to ever put anything recreational in that gap zone that was identified by Parks and Rec. So this is the last opportunity. So I would just encourage you guys to think about that and maybe think about putting some recreational activity or something in there to make the use of that land. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please state your name and your address.
Good evening, board. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Wayne Wiley. I'm like Aaron. I live within the 300-foot range of the property in the Edinburgh subdivision. I'm right across the street from the fire department. Development is coming. I've been in Clayton since '98. I grew up in northeastern North Carolina in a small rural area. Today, even in that area, there's one stoplight in the whole county and there's nothing there. I moved to Clayton because I love the small field. I'm not going to stop development, but I just got a couple of things, and I'm happy that Novo Nordisk is doing this for their employees, because employees work hard. Y'all work hard for y'all's jobs. Y'all have spaces to enjoy stuff. So I'm okay with that. Couple questions I have just for the design team when they do this. Like Aaron said, Gordon Road is speed limit 55, and it is a racetrack out there at sometimes. And I really wish the highway patrolman would patrol that more, because I know this is out of y'all's jurisdiction, so Clayton Police can't patrol it. But with the fire department going there also, me personally, I would like to see, it's a DOT road, and y'all probably don't have nothing to do with it, but maybe the research team, if y'all could discuss with DOT about making this speed limit a 35-mile-an-hour zone now through there instead of 55. Because, like Aaron said, we have some residents who walk that road. And it's dangerous. And one other thing I would like to mention too, the employees are going there. There's not much traffic going up and down there except for maybe deliveries, but now you're gonna have all the employees coming out there. Have y'all researched that maybe a traffic light might be warranted for the area? I think it would definitely create less accidents on that road. So, but I just wanted to make a few more couple comments. My last one was, I saw you a couple of storm ponds that are, I'm assuming going to feed to that little so-called dried up stream that runs through there. I don't know which way the water actually flows when there's water actually in it. I don't know if it goes north or south. But one concern I have is if all your storm water is going to that little creek and it's coming to the south, I know some of our residents in the back there have some flood issues when it rains real hard. So I just don't want to see, even though I can't speak for them because I don't own their parcels, but I would just like to see maybe, you know, their back of their properties aren't getting flooded by the extra storm water that, you know, that y'all want to design off of. So, but thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak?
I'm also, my name's John Riley. I live at 56 Slateford Drive, and I'm one of the residents that got the 300-foot notification. And I think it's a wonderful thing that Novo Nordisk is here, and it looks like a lovely facility, and I welcome that versus a chicken processing plant or a junkyard. It's a very nice thing. But I do think that there's a couple of situations that they can address that will not be horribly difficult for them to afford in the development of this property. If they're not going to use it all, then perhaps, as we had a presentation on recreation, one of the things that kept popping into my mind, the young lady kept saying, we need land, land, land. Well, we can talk about plans, we can talk about opportunities, we can talk about needs, but at the cost of escalating properties around here, you're going to have a tough time buying and paying for land. If they're not going to use it all, perhaps they could cede a bit of it to the recreational plans from Clayton. Secondly, I don't think that it would be inordinately difficult or expensive for them to make a provision to put a sidewalk in, perhaps with a bike lane, as far as along the property that they manage and they own, which would be a nice safety situation. And it's not going to be really that much more difficult, nor I think that is it going to break the bank. As Aaron pointed out, Novo Nordisk does well. And God bless them for doing well. They have lots of employees. But I think a few of those small considerations, these are not deal breakers. They're not going to break the bank, but it can increase the quality of life for the residents of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak? Hearing none, I'll turn it over to the board for their consideration. Are there any comments from the board? Yeah, Board Member Dupree?
I think I'm in favor of this, and the reason is because there could be a lot of different things put on that piece of property that could be put there. My wife spent a number of years working for SAS Institute in Cary, and this is very SAS-like in my mind that this is something for the employees, and I wish more companies had the means to do it. Not every company obviously can do it based on their size, but I think when a company has the means and the wherewithal to do something like that for their employees, I think it's a great thing for the employees, which is in turn a great thing for the town of Clayton, so I'm in support.
I thought I saw a hand go up on my left. Board Member Applewhite?
Yeah, I'm also in favor of the project. I think what is bothering me a little bit is the discussion that the folks in the public had, and the comments that they made should have been raised at the neighborhood meeting, where they could be aired out and discussed with the property owners and with the design team, and whether or not they accommodate them is beside the point. I think it's part of the process, is part of why we have the specific process in place. And the neighborhood meeting is the most important thing, in my opinion, as far as planning board, looking and seeing what the neighbors say, and trying to get an idea of the concerns that they have. I know it's not necessarily the purview of this board to evaluate what the neighbors are saying, but I think that's part of the process that we do evaluate. And I don't know if it needs to happen before it goes to town council, or if it needs to happen before it comes to the planning board. And I don't have a preference either way, but I do think there needs to be a neighborhood meeting where they can have these conversations with the design team. I don't know what that process looks like, but if they didn't do the 300-foot buffer, then they left folks out that otherwise would have had that conversation. And it may be the same result. It may be the same plans that go before town council, and that's fine. Frankly, I think it's a fine project, but they need to follow that process. So I'm trying to think about what the best process would be. And staff, maybe you can enlighten me, and if there's an opportunity to, I don't know if this goes to the next council meeting, and if that puts a pinch in the timeline, but I think it would be appropriate to hold at least an informal neighborhood meeting that notifies the neighborhood and allows them to at least give feedback on the project.
That is a good question. Typically, neighborhood meetings are done before a formal application is received and processed. What I would offer is that when the planning board could decide, make a recommendation as is, the planning board can also ask the applicant if they're willing or able to do another neighborhood meeting and then come back to the planning board for any kind of report outs of what has occurred. The typical schedule for town council would be, we would put this on the third Monday of November, which would be November 18th for a public hearing. So it could be that the applicant is able to do a neighborhood meeting before then. But I think I'd like to ask the applicant if they're able to perhaps have a neighborhood meeting before it goes back to council, or be willing to have a neighborhood meeting and come back with a report out. I think that would be something.
Conrad, I'm sorry, I was not here at the time when we went through the neighborhood meeting. Is it clear that the neighborhood meeting happened and we did the 100 feet according to the application, and then this changed? Is that accurate?
No, the UDO changed in January of this year to a 300-foot radius. So the application would be subject to that requirement.
And the 100 feet that was on our application, that was just an old application?
Correct.
Okay, we would have absolutely no issue doing another meeting since the process changed. I was just trying to understand where the error happened. So we would be happy to do another neighborhood meeting if the neighbors would like that.
Yeah. And, this project, when initially, the new UDA came out in January, this project was approved last February within Novo Nordisk, and it went on hold for a little while and then kind of cranked back up at the start of this year. We certainly have looked, and, it was brought up by Conrad, and we've, explored putting a bike path, and I forget the exact term for what type of roadway improvement it is through there. Or if that's not appropriate this time, a fee in lieu of when that time does come that's needed. We want the facility to be there and nice for us, but, we don't want to negatively impact the community. And, I mean, as the project manager, I have a budget, right? Like I can't speak for all of Novo and say, oh yeah, we can do whatever. So for me as the project manager, I want to do, what I can to make the facility as nice as I can for the employees. But, at the same time, we don't want to do anything that's going to negatively impact the surrounding community. So to the extent that we can control that, obviously.
So Conrad, based on those comments, do we vote to table this item or we just?
Yeah, I think.
I think it has, after the neighborhood meeting, it still has to come back down stuff.
Well,
We can't, I don't think we can continue.
Can I just say one thing on that? So, from the project manager standpoint, we've got the design contractor on board and been waiting for about 5 or 6 months to move forward. So if we could have that neighborhood discussion and get that input and move forward, I mean, we'd love to do that, so we can hopefully bring this to our employees sooner. And like I said, we certainly are open to, whatever we can do within the means that we have to make this facility,
Personally, I would
nicer
hate
for
to
the
hold
area.
them up 4 months, waiting to
Right.
come back to us. So I think it's reasonable, and I appreciate y'all offering and wanting to have conversation with the neighborhood. I think they just need to have conversation with the neighborhood, and I think the neighborhood's done a great job tonight of expressing their concerns. Hopefully, you guys can come to an agreement with Novo, and y'all can come back singing, to the town council off of the same sheet of music. So I just say that we push it forward to the town council, and the town council's obviously more than capable of making decisions and placing conditions on if the conditions are needed. So I think that's reasonable. Having a meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable with that. I don't want to hold them up by that as well. So if there's an easy process for them to move forward with a neighborhood meeting contingent before they go to the town council, I'm fine with that.
The question is, can we approve it contingent, can we recommend it contingent upon them having a meeting with like we should have had with the 300-foot prior to going to the council?
Correct. Yeah, that is a possibility. That's something that the board, y'all can make your decision, your recommendation, and have that as a contingency that they hold a neighborhood meeting before it go to town council.
All right, so I'm a senior facility manager for Cisco in RTP. So I know that your company only owns the plot, right? So what we're doing here is saying if we're going to rezone it or not. What happens between what you own and what the town and the county owns, that's a whole nother conversation, right? So I appreciate everything that you guys are bringing to Clayton. We also have all these facilities that you're talking about, daycare, basketball, volleyball, things for our employees that will attract more people to Clayton. And I also understand the 55 flying through there, that's crazy, but that's more of a DOT, but that's definitely something that I think, once we say, yes, we want to do this, we all come back together as a team with everybody putting their input in, we should be able to get everything that's needed for the neighborhood and for Northern artists and, protecting just our regular citizens that's going up and down that road, because that one way in, one way out, it feels like to me, just everyone's trying so quickly to get out. They're not thinking about the people that's walking or the kids that's going to be going to the facilities. So safety is the number one thing that we always talk about on this planning board. We want to make sure that our neighbors are safe, that the people that are vending, going in and out with the Pepsi trucks and things like that, everyone is safe. So I agree with the lanes and everything else, but I think this is more of a, are we willing to go ahead and approve it or not? And I'm in favor of approving it, so. That's just my input.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from Board Member Gleason?
I just want to say, I am in favor of this as well, but as a property owner in the neighborhood that's currently in the area under construction, I don't know if I caught your name, but you mentioned that you had just started like at the beginning of the year, so I imagine you were the person we received a letter from of the construction. No, not you. But for those of you that are in this upcoming neighborhood, I mean, they have done a pretty decent job of at least maintaining the communication with us as in the area that's already under construction. The only thing that I don't really like is, and I don't really know if this is a Novo Nordisk thing or not, but as soon as the construction started, someone came in and completed the sidewalks from our neighborhood to the road, and there was no ADA compliance whatsoever. It was just like a straight sideway connection to the back of the curb, and there was no curb ramps put in or anything. It's just straight up to the curb. So I don't know if that's Novo, the contractor that came in with you, or however it works, but I don't want the same thing to happen with the current neighborhood. And so while I understand from an engineering perspective and from a project manager that you have a budget, even if multi-use path doesn't fit within the budget, I would still make a recommendation for the rest of us that there should be a requirement that at least right of way be allocated from the parcels to either DOT or whoever owns the road for at least space for a 10-foot multi-use path. Because I can tell you financially, a bike lane with a sidewalk is going to be more expensive than allocating the right of way and having the money for a concrete path or even an asphalt path, just because pavement's more expensive due to oil prices and everything. So I'm trying to at least compromise and save y'all some money, but also at least make it better for the neighborhood, because I think realistically speaking, if the area from here all the way down to Wilson's Mills is not going to be industrial, it's guaranteed to be residents that will most likely be working for your company in the future. So you might as well make it more beneficial for any future employees you guys may have, at least to have access to this amazing facility. Because like I said, I'm all for it, and I'm neighbors with people who work there who are in favor for it. So I would just like to add that on as a recommendation. And so.
Alrighty, we got to get to the motion phase first before we get the recommendations. Okay, Mrs. Raskin.
I want to add one other thing too. I want to, just as part of not only the neighborhood meeting, but also that analysis, to see if we can get over to Bestwood Drive, if there's another way to do it, or if it needs to go through this property. Again, it's something that we brought up in another group, so just want to make sure, and because I fully believe that Gordon Road will be all industrial at some point. And there's just, the connections are bad. And it looks like if people are coming from the main Novo facility, they'd probably be coming from Powhatan. Is that correct? So how would people get to this facility? They would come from Powhatan, right? So they would have had to make 2 left turns in order to get there, which are the hardest turns to make in any area. So if we could somehow have a connection from Powhatan directly into this site, that would cut off all that traffic that would be going all the way around.
Yes, and we've had some thoughts along those lines as well. Nothing approved or at this point, but I do want to say Novo is in the middle of a traffic study for this whole area. It includes Gordon Road, Powhatan. Suggestions, or it's not my traffic study, but this parcel's in there, and it's there's suggestions for roundabouts or traffic lights and where we need turning lanes and those kind of things. Sure.
Yeah. So sorry, let me help. I don't think Donnie got all of the studies. So we did do a traffic study, and we did ask if we could do, because of our regulations, just employee access. So it would just be folks with badges. And they said the wetland disturbance was too much to have a just employee access road through there. So I don't know about wetlands, but I would assume if we can't have a small road for employees, we wouldn't want to have a large road.
So you're saying to get from this site over to Bestwood Drive, there's wetlands in the way to be able to make that connection?
Yeah, let me just say one thing. So there are, and there's also, beside the facility that's there, there's a lift station there that's hard to see. That's back up in there for service for the county and the town. And there mostly is that all of the rest of that land is basically wetlands.
So basically everything green in that, on that area, everything green is wetlands.
Is there's a few little spaces here and there, but not much.
Just making sure.
Some down around where the utility easement currently goes through there, there is some in that space. See anything?
Nope, you said.
I just want to make sure we're doing all the due diligence because that's going to cause a lot of stress on 70 and those two intersections that are only going to get worse over time.
So, board member Sharasky, so I did look up our CTP plan. We don't have a connection of the road directly from Powhatan to Gordon. We are showing some kind of visionary road connecting. I think there is some trouble with the logistics of that, of how we're going to be able to accomplish that, but we do have it noted in our CTP. Looking at that road, North Tech Drive and the other road down there, that I don't see anything noted directly. So there's no connection from Powhatan directly down south to the site off of this road right here. The CTP is looking, we have an industrial connector to connect Powhatan. How that's going to be accomplished with the current site is something I'm not 100% sure on right now, but we do have that labeled to connect to Powhatan so that you wouldn't have to come out to 70, back down 70 and across. However, how that's going to be accomplished, I'm not 100% sure on.
I mean, is that shown on the traffic study? I mean, is there a way we can get a copy of that traffic study? It'd be great to see that. I've never seen that.
The traffic study was not required by staff, but that's something that Novo.
If they're talking about it, would they be willing to share it with us? Yeah, I mean, I'm just asking if we can see it, that'd be great. If we can't, we can't. I mean, I'm just asking the question. I'm not making it a condition of this. Again, I want everyone to realize I'm also for this, but I want to make sure we're doing our full due diligence while we have an opportunity with a site that is a conditional rezoning, that we are doing everything we can to prepare for future conditions in this area, which is going to be a lot worse than it is now. That's what everyone needs to realize. I mean, we're talking about how bad it is on Powhatan and how it's not bad on Gordon, and that's one of the reasons why the site was cited on Gordon. It's not going to be that way in 10 years, 15 years. Gordon's going to be as bad as Powhatan. I've heard a lot of people that want to develop property along those properties with industrial sites and things like that. So it's going to be as bad as Powhatan. So I just want to make sure that we're prepared so that we're not putting undue force onto places that should not be getting it by putting in a very, very standard roadway thing, which is a package road or a service road, so you don't have to go out to the main road. If we can't do it, we can't do it. If there's wetlands, there's wetlands, I get it. I just want to make sure we're doing all the due diligence we can to make sure that we have exhausted all efforts to make sure that we can't make these connections that should be made. But if there's another connection out to Powhatan from GLP one way, I mean, that would be fine too. I just want to make sure there's other ways because the railroad is a huge barrier in this area.
Does anyone, so I think from a staff point of view, I think what we might do is have that as a discussion point for us to consider.
Yeah.
I know that Novo and leadership are meeting, and they can further discuss that connection, and town council can maybe address that going forward. So we can note that as a consideration. Staff will make sure to advise town council that. I also wanted to inform with the question from board member Dupree about the number of people. I believe there were 29 people in the 100-foot radius and 348 people in the 300-foot radius. So there's a couple more. I'm sorry, 48 people in the 300-foot radius. So my math isn't right now. What would that be? Almost 20 more, about 20 more people. Thank you.
Yeah, and Conrad, I agree with that, with what you're saying. If we're gonna make not a condition, but we're gonna say that they can't move forward to council without having a neighborhood meeting, I would say let's include in that doing some analysis of another connection between Powhatan and Gordon, just to show that we've exhausted those efforts. That's all. So I don't want to hold it up either. I just want to make sure that's done.
I'm sorry?
Then, Yeah, that would be great too. Yeah, if I could, yeah, absolutely. If we could all see that. I'm not saying myself, I'd love to see it. I'll read through it, but if we could see it, that'd be great. Yeah.
Maybe it's something that they can speak to at the neighborhood meeting, as also at the town council meeting, and articulate that and kind of speak a little bit more about that future connectivity to Gordon Road from Powhatan.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions from the board? If not, I entertain a motion to recommend or not recommend 2024-47 CZM Novo Nordis Arts Center rezoning property from light industrial to the conditional commercial zoning district to the town council. We have a motions of consistency statement. We have 4 options. Please look over the options before the motion. There are also significant chatter of various addendums. So I guess the person that makes the motion, and then once we get a second, whoever makes the second can try to add. I guess I foresee something here. Whoever makes the second can try to add their addendum, and then we can go from there.
I'm happy to do it. I don't have the language down.
I think Ms. Bland's
Give me
going
a
to
copy
do it.
of it.
I think Bland's going to do it. I think Ms. Bland.
Ms. Bland.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, to recommend approval of this rezoning request based on.
Can you put your mic on, sir? Sorry, Commissioner.
Ms. Bland, your mic's not on.
It is. She just needs to talk into it.
Oh, it's on. Can you bend it down a little bit?
Sure.
There you go.
I make a motion to recommend approval of this rezoning request based on consistency with the future land use map and the adopted 2045 comprehensive growth plan, in that the properties are designated as employment center, EC, in the future land use map. Goal LU1 is to preserve Clayton's character while allowing for growth and development in appropriate areas. Policy LU 1.3 seeks to encourage non-residential land use uses in areas consistent with the future land use map. And policy LU 1.4 seeks to encourage new businesses and non-residential development in employment centers designated on the future land use map. This action is reasonable and in the public interest, in that the comprehensive growth plan encourages non-residential uses in this area. The request is compatible with existing zoning and land uses in the area.
We have a motion for approval made by Board Member Bland. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Board Member Dupree.
Do we want to add the amendment about having the public meeting before the council?
I would say contingent upon having
There you go.
a board meeting, not a board meeting, contingent upon having a public meeting to the folks within the 300-foot radius as is in the current UDO prior to town council voting.
We have a second with an addendum made by Board Member Dupree.
And do we want to make an amendment for allocating space for future multi-use path along the property limits?
I don't think we can, we can require them to have a public meeting. I don't think we require, that's something they have to agree to do or not agree to do, and I don't think we can, our approval is contingent upon that.
I mean, we were able to do that with the low-income housing, where we were able to force them to build like fences and stuff. How is this any different?
So I'd say that the comprehensive plan is going to require some of the cross-section to be. I think it might be that what you're looking at possibly is you're going to have either right-of-way dedication, you could possibly have a fee in lieu for the improvements, or you can ask that the applicant make the installation during the construction phase of the development. But that would be something that staff would cross that bridge, if you will, when it comes in back for a site plan review. So right now, what I want to say is there may not be necessarily 100% a need to have a condition that speaks to the improvements unless you were wanting them to not have a fee in lieu, but to have them installed. But I think having the flexibility for a fee in lieu and the option to make installation on Gordon Road is to have that option open. And not have 100% of commitment unless the board decides that you do want to not have the option for a fee in lieu and have the multi-use path installed.
The one thing I'm concerned about, and since this is a conditional use zoning, we can make a condition if we wanted to, is the right of way. I do agree with that. The fee in lieu, if you want to decide it's site plan, whether they build it with their neighborhood conversation, that's fine. But none of that makes any difference if there's not enough right of way along the roadway to be able to build it. So if there was,
So perhaps it's a matter of committing to the right of way allocation.
Yep.
And per the comprehensive growth plan, the 2045 plan.
well, the question is, does that have to be a condition that we vote on?
I see there's some nods. I think that it's a matter of, it wouldn't be a condition. It would be a matter of staff processing the application and making that a technical comment when it comes back for a formal site plan review. But it could be an added condition if the board feels like have that reassurance that you do want to have the 2045 comprehensive plan put into effect.
This is also complicated. That's an NCDOT road. It's not a town of Clayton road. So I'm not sure the town of Clayton taxpayers are going to go out and maintain anything that's in a right of way that is not a tax, just not part of the town of Clayton. So we're not sure that that NCDOT, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that NCDOT would probably say, we've got our standards. As long as they meet our standards, we're fine. So it's very complicated in this situation where you have Wilson's Mills, Johnston County, and the town of Clayton all coming together there, because I'm assuming that the reason why we never saw anything on the Wilson's Mills Fire Department is because it's annexed by the town of Wilson's Mills, I'm assuming. So it's very complicated, and that's one thing that I don't think that we're maybe overthinking this situation, because we can't legislate anything on Wilson's Mills and we can't legislate anything on NCDOT. So, and to me, for any corporation, no matter how big or small, just to be forced to pay a fee in lieu for something that would never, ever, ever possibly be built doesn't seem fair. And for us to force them to build something that will never be connected to doesn't seem fair. So I really think that we need to leave it up to our existing code and our staff and our town council to figure out the next steps on that, because there's so many other issues that are coming to play here.
Let me just say real quick, I'll respectfully absolutely disagree with what you just said, because this happens all over the states where there are communities and municipalities that require right of way on state roads, understanding that if they put something there, there could eventually be a maintenance agreement with NCDOT where when it's built, or even NCDOT does maintain it into the future. I mean, they do have a complete streets policy now statewide, so they should be more than happy to do it.
That's when DOT builds a street.
What we're asking for happens literally every municipality in the state.
There's some general statutes and some case law that's come up in the last couple of years that speaks to
I understand what you're saying. I just absolutely 100% disagree with what you're saying. I think we can ask for this and should. And again, I think this is a great project. I'm going to vote for this project no matter what we decide here. But again, I want to make sure we're going through everything that we can, all our due diligence, to make sure that we get what's best for, not just for the applicant, but what's for the community. And we have community members here that live right across the street. And there's a lot of places where sidewalks are built that aren't connected that eventually will be connected. I mean, that's the whole point. If it's not done one time, it's probably never going to be done. So and again, I think this happens a lot. I would be more than happy to, I think the right of way, I think we should make it a condition. If you all disagree with me, that's fine. Then you all disagree with me. But I do think the right of way need should be a condition of this rezoning.
I think,
No.
I think the general,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
I think the general idea of what Mike and I are trying to get around is this is such a large property, and all future rezonings that we're going to be dealing with are most likely going to be large properties as well. And we want to make the precedent known that any other future businesses and companies coming in with these large plots should all follow this same procedure. It's not like we're trying to pin it to Novo or anything like that. It's just if we want Clayton to grow in this way and have this connectivity, we have to set the precedent now for everyone else to also do this.
Chair Moore, if I may, any conditions that are put on requested by the board will need to be accepted by the applicant as well as it goes to town council. What we can do is what staff can commit to is, so that it doesn't kind of hang up your all's motion, is we can provide that as in our staff update to council. We can also discuss this with the applicant. I'm sure they'll get some more thoughts when they do their neighborhood meeting. And that way, the matter of, is there a greenway path or multi-use path or the right of way is dedicated? Not to say it's not an important discussion, but I would say that staff can update town council, and maybe there's some resolution or clarification in that regard as to what they would be willing to commit to and what the town would be willing to accept. Because I would say that I wouldn't want this discussion to cause any division, but what we would do is we would update town council.
Thank you, and I concur, because I can see what I knew going into it, this is going to be an impasse. So I concur. So far we have a motion to approve with option 1 for approval. We have a second with an addendum. I think most of us, or all of us, are, if I can get a consensus in favor of upon approval, that the applicant would go back and have a community meeting with the property owners that are within 300 feet versus the 100 feet originally before it goes to council. I think we are amenable to that. Is that clear? Okay. The point of contention is the sidewalk, the walkway, the bike path, or whatever we want to call it. I don't believe we have consensus in adding that as a contingency or recommendation.
I agree. That's accurate.
That's accurate. So Conrad gave us an option, the planning director. Are you amenable to his recommendation for those who will like that? And first of all, we have to, after we get this motion passed with that, can we get a consensus, a second consensus? Would we like for Conrad or the staff to even move forward with having that discussion as part of their contingencies of additional recommendations with the applicant to include, as far as the bike path on the adjacent roadway along the property line?
Can I mention 2 things real quick? This will be very quick, Chair. One is, I'm hoping the traffic study you sent us does have some bike and ped recommendations in it.
Well,
I would hope that.
We won't see that. This will be going to council.
Okay, I understand that. And 2, I think it's okay if we don't have consensus, Chair. I think there's nothing wrong with having a division amongst us. We actually want this. We should have different opinions and different thoughts, and maybe not every vote is a 8-0, 9-0 vote. I'm perfectly okay with that. So if we don't have a consensus and you want to figure out what the majority of this, since we do have a quorum, is what it is, I'd be more than willing and happy to say who, even do a straw poll, raise your hand, who agrees with this, who doesn't, if you want to do it that way. I think it's okay if we don't have consensus.
No, I agree with you. First of all, I do agree with you. And it's not about a consensus, it's about having, as a planning board, we're tasked with making a recommendation to council. And I'm at the point now, and I think most of the board is at a point now, they want to move forward with a recommendation to the town council. So That's what I was looking forward to. So now, as I stated earlier, we have a motion on the board, made motion by Board Member Bland. We have for motion 1 for approval. We have a second by Board Member Dupree with the added addendum of the property owners, instead of the 100 feet of notification of property owners for a public meeting that was sent out to adhere to the UDO as of January 2024 of 300 feet, and have that meeting before this proceeds to council. If that's the motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now, do we want to have a discussion with the second part with Mr. Gleason and Mr. Saraski's condition, having that brought forward by staff to have a discussion included in their recommendations, to have discussion with the applicant, included recommendations? How does the board feel about that? I don't think we need to have a formal motion, but we can have a consensus on that.
Why not a formal motion? Why
Yeah,
can't
Mr.
somebody make a formal motion and.
All righty,
put it
is there a
in?
motion?
So if the rules of order, we made the motion, we had the second, it's been passed.
Right.
I don't
Think we can do it?
I don't think I'm not sure, but I don't think we can go back to the item and then make another motion if that previous
We
motion.
can't amend our approval because we just approved it, but we can make a secondary motion that puts these items in for them to at least have that discussion. That doesn't affect what our initial approval was,
Okay.
I think. I mean, we can make a motion for anything we want.
Sounds like the town clerk is agreeing with Board Member Dupree. No.
Am I correct in that? Yeah. So y'all can make your motion now to add the things you want to add. We can vote on that and send that to them to make sure the board, the planning department has those discussions and it doesn't get ignored.
As I stated, Mr. Gleason or Mr. Saraski, do you have a motion that you would like to make? One of you.
All right, fine. I'd like to make a motion that we add an addendum to the conditional rezoning that the plan, I don't even know how to express it, that the planning department ensures that there is conversations needed to be had about potential right-of-way acquisition, or right-of-way dedication in order to construct future multi-use paths.
I have a motion by
Did you
Board
get all
Member.
that? Because I can't say that again.
Got a motion by Board Member Saraski. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Board Member Gleason. Conrad, we may need to do a roll call. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
Let's do a roll call, Chair Moore, if I may. I'm going to go from left to right. So all in favor of the motion, just say aye when I ask your name. So Board Member Bland, Board Member Gleason, Board Member Spence, Board Member Lipscomb, Board Member Moore,
No.
Board Member Dupree,
No.
Board Member Williams,
Aye.
Board Member Saraski,
Aye.
Board Member Applewhite.
No.
That's 4 votes to 5 votes, motion passes.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 5.
Wait, did I say?
New business. Item 5A, Planning Board meeting schedule. We're now here from staff.
So we have your, the last thing is the planning board meeting schedule. Well, that is getting us into the next year. Don't have it pulled up here, but you'll notice that it's pretty much going to be the same thing that we've done this year. We've got November and December, just shifting those meeting dates. So we don't have any conflicts with Thanksgiving week and the week of Christmas holidays. So your next meeting, for example, is going to be the 19th of November. That's the Tuesday for this year. And we're doing that same approach for next year. So 2025 Planning Board will be meeting a week in advance as well as in December also. Every other meeting date is pretty much going to stay the same thing for the fourth Monday of every month, meeting at 6 p.m. here in the town council chambers. So we would request a motion from the board to adopt this schedule so we can provide that to the town clerk.
We heard the recommendation for staff that presented the 2025 Planning Board meeting dates. Is there any discussion from the board? If not, I entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt the 2025 meeting schedule as proposed.
Motion for approval made by Board Member Liscum. Is there a second? Second by Board Member Applewhite. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is item 6, informal discussion and public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak at this time? Hearing none, is any member of the planning board that has any comments? If not, I entertain a motion for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Board Member Dupree. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Williams. All in favor, say aye. We adjourn.